Great, and welcome, Chris. Our our 2025. We started our year off with Chris and TIL. So glad you're here. Thank you for coming.
Looking forward to it. I like the way you're growing that beard in.
Oh, yeah, yeah, beard and hair. It's especially my hair is probably the longest it's been since high school. I'm getting to pursue my lifelong dream of having my hair in a man bun. Not today because of the hat, but.
I love it.
All right. Well, I'll kick things off since we started recording. And so I'll start with my little intro. So, hello, everyone, and welcome to the October edition of the Global Chamber League of Global Nonprofits. I'm Jacob Dietz, founder and CEO of Kalimo Collective. And as always, truly grateful to have you all here today. Whether this is your first time joining us or you've been with us throughout the year, you're part of a growing movement, one that's really redefining what it means to collaborate for impact in a rapidly shifting world by the minute. And over the past year, this series has become a space where we sort of have rolled up our sleeves together to challenge the status quo, to navigate what I like to call the murky, choppy waters of the impact space. We've explored everything from innovative funding models and resilient leadership, and even looked at how technology can play a role, partnerships, and looking at systems change. And today, all of those threads converge into one essential question: how do we build the infrastructure for collective impact? And so, looking at the global nonprofit sector, we sort of stand at a major inflection point. The old equation, grants plus goodwill equals sustainability, no longer holds up. The challenges we're facing today are simply too interconnected for that. We see incredible mission-driven organizations doing critical work across the world, but struggling not from a lack of purpose or heart, but from a lack of alignment and strategic partnership. So what's the solution? It's time for a new kind of math, what we're calling here the new math of impact. And in this equation, 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2, it equals 3, which is great for me as a geologist. Math isn't really our best. We're not the best at math, but because when collaboration is designed intentionally, when trust, clarity, and shared vision align, something greater than the sum of its parts emerges. That's where transformation lives. And so for those of us who are joining us for the first time, a brief word about Global Chamber and why this community is such a powerful ally for nonprofits. Global Chamber is a worldwide platform spanning over 200 countries and close to 600 regions and cities, connecting CEOs, investors, nonprofits, and industry leaders who are all working towards sustainable growth and global progress. But beyond this global footprint, what makes Global Chamber special is its connective tissue. It's where business, philanthropy, and purpose intersect. For nonprofits, it offers more than visibility, it provides a bridge to global partnerships and investors seeking measurable, meaningful impact, to peers who share your mission but bring different strengths to the table, and to ideas that help organizations move from surviving on grants to thriving through collaboration. In short, Global Chamber helps us move beyond boundaries, the silos, the fragmentation, the isolation, and toward a future where collaboration is the currency of impact. And so that brings us perfectly to today's guest, someone who has built an entire career around making collaboration not just inspiring, but executable. It's my absolute pleasure to introduce Paula Douglas-Sidel, the founder of Powerful Partners. Paula is, at her core, a relationship builder and a brilliant strategist. She has spent decades pioneering relationship-driven approaches across industries as diverse as financial services, the built environment, climate, and sustainability. Her work has shown again and again that the greatest breakthroughs happen when we stop competing for resources and start designing for shared success. She's here today to share her philosophy that collaboration is a powerful formula, $1 + $1 equals 3, a principle that sits at the heart of her framework for creating and curating and sustaining alliances that truly stretch organizational capacity and amplify impact. And so today's session is going to move beyond inspiration and into strategy. We'll explore trust and clarity, the essential human principles that make partnerships thrive, executable frameworks, how to audit, curate, and sustain your partner portfolio for long-term success, and of course, the persuasive math of impact, how collaboration multiplies capacity, creativity, and funding potential. Paula's work offers a blueprint for nonprofits ready to step beyond scarcity and into synergy, ready to move from fragmented efforts to truly collective impact. Paula, thank you so much for joining us today. We're eager to learn from your expertise and to explore how together we can make this persuasive math a living reality across the global nonprofit ecosystem. And with that, I will hand it over to you. The virtual floor is yours.
Thank you so much. What a beautiful introduction. I really appreciate it. I first of all, before I get started, I was curious where people were joining us from. So if you have a moment to just pop that in the chat, I will let you know that I'm joining you from Washington, D.C. Fall has just arrived. It's nice and chilly. I'm all cozy in my office, but would love to see where everyone else is from too. I see New York City, Los Angeles. Hi, Boston in the house. This is wonderful. So it's great to see everybody, and I really do appreciate it. The UAE and winter has started. Wow, it happens fast, doesn't it? I can't believe we're in October already. Well, as Jacob said, I am the founder of Powerful Partners. We are based in Washington, D.C. here. And over the years in my career, I've had the privilege of working at the intersection of associations and nonprofits and in the built environment, financial services, global engagement, but always having that lens of partnerships, alliances, and collaborative frameworks. So my mission is simple. I think the work is complex, but it's to help organizations stretch their resources, not by doing more alone, but by doing more together. And I feel like this philosophy sort of grew out of a long period of my kind of, I guess, my cocoon of my career, right? So as I was becoming who I am. And one thing that I really believe throughout all these years, and I'd say I'm going to date myself by saying I've been in the industry 30 plus years. I believe that to move the needle forward on some of the world's biggest problems, we really need to work in collaboration with others. The world's problems are huge and nobody can do it alone. And so I get chills thinking about that because I just think that this is as we move through a time, the last 5 years, a lot of disruptions in the markets for various reasons that we really do need to sort of come together as a community. So effectively, I am encouraging organizations to build frameworks that move them out of those silos and into community and collaboration with others. And I think it's a big ask because I know a lot of people are hesitant to leave their egos at the door or take their hat off at the door. But throughout my career, a lot of times when we're, gathering these communities and gathering these people, we always say, leave that hat at the door. Like, let's all come to the table and sit at the same table and see what ideas float. Way back when, many years ago, when I started my career, I had no idea. I was like answering phones. I had no idea that one job would lead to so much. So I was, answering phones for a small valuation standard setter, and that already put me front and center, right? So I'm already building these relationships. I had no idea that I was setting into motion a thread to my career, and that would be relationship building. And as I grew through the various roles in that organization, the thread appeared and it continued. The work became more collaborative, and it was happening at a time where collaboration was not a word we used a lot. Everybody, even in the organization, we all still were like, hey, I'm in this lane and I'm in that lane. But I think, it just really grew from there. And the way that I got my work done was to reach out to others. So I'm working for this small organization. And of course, as the organization grows, there's more strategic initiatives that just land in my lap. Like, hey, we're doing government work now, figure it out. And so the way that I would do it would be just to reach out to our partners. I would reach out to our advisory council members. I'd reach out to our sponsors. And because I became more and more visible, I was able to be nimble in this, right? And sort of just, hey, let's, we need appraisers who know how to value agriculture, land swaps with the government. Like, we need those types of appraisers. And I would get, a team together, and we'd go ahead and proceed with these different projects. And as that time moved on, I was trying to figure out, I was like, who am I? Am I communications? Am I engagement? Am I marketing? Am I a governance person? And I landed on this relationship building peace. And I didn't even know how to brand myself. And so I got kind of lucky. I bit the bullet. I said, I'm going to be a relationship builder. I'm going to make this my career. And within a month, I had landed at the American Institute of Architects, where what was previously my soft skill now was a hard skill. And that organization, I really do credit them for, you know, having a portfolio of 200 different domestic and international alliances, that they really believed in cultivating those conversations to see what we could do together. And I was lucky too, in that I had a CEO at the time who very much was open to collaboration and also felt like we didn't have to lead every conversation. So that all became the basis for my company that I'm running now. I am now on a mission to help other organizations make those connections, make the connections that count, and develop those frameworks for the engagement that they need. I think this is really important to also really curate those relationships, right? So you're not madly out there networking and I'm just going to, bring everybody in-house. You really want to curate who you're going to be talking to, and based on the issues you're serving or your organization is serving. So again, I really think that we have to act in collaboration. One thing that was really stands out to me throughout my career is I ended up being able to take the first group of architects to the UN COP, and my team and I were able to facilitate this engagement. While I was at COP, one of the phrases I heard just as I was like walking in and out of rooms, and I don't know who said it and I don't know who to credit it to. I wish I could say I came from it, but it said, "Partnership is the new leadership." And I really think that that's something that we can hang our hats on when we're hanging them up at the door. And really think about that's, if you are able to sort of share the burden, share the wealth, then that is real leadership right there. And so I really think that this is a great time for us. It's a mad world. There's a lot going on, but I think this is a great time for us to actually come together and move the needle on what matters. I want to address the formula, the 1 + 1 = 3, because I originally, many years ago, was a theater major. And I actually took a class. I don't think it was called math for theater majors, but I think it was math for the liberal arts major. And so I do love this formula because it is a powerful formula. I think that too often organizations chase the funds, they chase more staff, they chase the I want to lead this, I want to be on top. But when you actually partner with others, it's not 1 + 1 = 2, it's 3, it could be 4, it could be 5, because you're bringing together so many different aspects of when partnerships are done well, that you can generate more outcomes than neither one could do on their own. So I think that is where I want to land for a few minutes, because Jacob and I had an amazing conversation the other day, and I'm trying to replicate it. I was like, I wish we just recorded it. But I want to land there for a few minutes. I'm sure we can go back into some other details, but wanted to see, Jacob, if we wanted to open the door to the conversation now.
Yeah, no, that was a great, I think any relationship builder, like being able to tell a story, I think that is critical across all, levels of impact is storytelling. And, storytelling helps you relate to others. It helps others see themselves in you. And so I really appreciate how you shared your story and weaved in the importance of partnership and how, that evolved naturally. And I think another thing that I think is important to discuss and think about, and I've had many conversations about this, is that idea of like your soft skill becoming, that's your career. I think that a lot of times, and this is something that I've run into as a relationship builder, is, especially like at the K-12 level, like a lot of those soft skills aren't as valued. It's harder to measure. And so how can you have a standardized test for relationship building? If those are your skills, you might, like me, get a few extra detentions for talking too much or building new friends, or just like sparking a lot of energy in the group. I think that and so that side of you might get quieted. But I think in this world where things are, it's too much to do it on your own. And I think that it's hard to sometimes for a lot of organizations to really see a clear pathway towards collaborating and partnership. And so, like, my mindset is, instead of, just thinking of, like, you don't have to tear your silo walls down, but, as Paul was saying, it's like we can just start to poke holes in the silos and make those connections, and start to have conversations. And so I think that, a lot of thinking back as a teacher and also as a student, there a lot of leaders might have some old scars of group work, of being the one that had to do all the work, and so, like, that can build up, and so there can be an uncertainty around the results of collaboration. But would love to open this up. We have some really great people in this group that, what are some of y'all's thoughts on maybe either the power or value of collaborating, the difficulties, thinking about the equation that Paula mentioned. What are some thoughts? Feel free to come off mute. This can be a very collaborative discussion. And Chris, would love to hear. Yeah, May, go ahead.
Jacob, are we waiting for someone else? Because I think they may have.
Well, I saw May come off mute, but would love to hear while you're here. You mentioned about SDG 17, which is, to me, it's one of my favorites and one of the most important. And so, how do you embrace that SDG goal and just collaboration and partnerships in your everyday work?
Well, appreciate the question, and don't want to be rude to Meg, so that's why I asked. But I mean, it's essential for what we're doing, because we have a client-centric model. So we're doing ecosystem building around our specific client needs on the law side, where we want to go above and beyond just addressing their legal needs to understanding their business aspirations, and then introducing them to parties that they may want to consider that can help them to achieve that goal. And on the tech side, similarly, but we're doing it with automation. So we're working with their permission to use their data to match them with the right resources for that aspiration. I'll summarize by saying one of the things I heard about Silicon Valley was that if you're in the entrepreneurial space, you might have the opportunity to bump into someone, have lunch, come up with an idea on a napkin, and then actually cut a deal where you at least have an oral agreement for funding. So that intentional collision that creates a lot of value. Mm-hmm. We want to replicate that for historically underrepresented, underserved communities, digitally as well as with humans. And that's one of the reasons our relationship with the Global Chamber is so important to what we do.
That's amazing, Chris. I love that. And I love that we said, like, kind of the intentional collision. So, you're sort of out there networking and meeting people. I think the amazing thing about building your network, and I found this, not only with running Powerful Partners, but also on my own personal networking, is you never know where those connections are going to lead. And I think that's kind of exciting. We're all, we want to get everything done right away. But a lot of times you'll meet someone and then there's just like, there's kind of a cultivation period of, like, getting to know and all of that, and then you never know, like in a year something may pop up. You had a conversation, you met, and then you had some conversations, and then either we have something we can collaborate on, we have a project, or I'm able to put you in touch with someone else. I just kind of love the mapping of that and how it happens. It's kind of magical, I think, and maybe that's why I'm drawn to it.
If I may just briefly share, Paula, to echo that point, one wise person whose name don't remember right now, said, luck is where opportunity meets preparation. And that is kind of the essence of what we try to enable and we try to make happen with the communities with which we work.
That is a fabulous quote. Next time we'll put it on a slide. I think it's very true though. There's a magic that happens and luck is part of that.
Thank you for that.
I think, that's something that I call it sort of the flow. And I think that, when I'm in the flow, I am prepared. There's
Mhm.
a lot of things happening. And so, uh, things just naturally align. And I think that, that that happens a lot. I think when you have that mind of um, I'm seeking people, I'm seeking partnerships, I'm seeking collaboration.
Mhm.
And I think that it's 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 really such a powerful tool and a necessary tool. And I feel like we all have these quotes. One of the things that I've heard over the years, that this was at a summit a few years ago, that collaboration is the new competition. And I think that that might not resonate with everyone, but I think that people that are open to collaborate in this world are going to naturally be ahead of the curve. And I think those that stay in those silos,
Mhm.
um, it's going to be hard to catch up because the networks will be built, the relationships will be built, the work is moving forward. And so, uh, Paul, I want to talk about something that sort of falls back into this like the idea of soft skills. I think
Mhm.
that's a critical conversation to have, because I think a lot of people, it- that's some area where maybe you have it, but it's not as valued in society. And so that confidence right there is not as important. And so thinking about like trust, clarity, and like win-win listening as non-negotiables for sustainable alliances,
Mhm.
those sound almost like soft skill oriented, but in practice, they're really like operational pillars. And so, how
Mhm.
do you see, in the work that you've done, how do you see leaders cultivating that trust and clarity, especially when resources are stretched or when organizations have very different power dynamics at the table?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that I mean obviously the trust and clarity is super, it's essential, right? That trust has to be there for the relationship to grow and turn into other things. I think that the biggest and it's another one of those skills, and you can say hard skill, soft skill, it is probably both, is listening. And so building trust by listening to your colleagues. And I'm gonna go a little off on the side here. I hope you all just kind of come along with me for a moment. But there's a picture of a horse behind me. I actually volunteer at a therapy barn. I've been a rider for 20 some years. And I think the horses have a lot to teach us about listening and trust. And I've had these animals are huge and they actually do sort of tell you how they're feeling. And so when I was riding, a lot of times, especially like a school horse or the horse is kind of conditioned to have riders on him that, different people at different skill levels. Um, but sometimes a teacher would say, "Oh, I think he's just messing with you. He's trying to make you nervous." And I was like, a lot of times it's like, no, so he's uncomfortable. Maybe something's wrong with the saddle. Maybe something's wrong with his back or whatever. And so I feel like I just saw this at the barn yesterday. It was a note from the barn manager about just reminding volunteers and riders that you are building a relationship with this animal based on mutual trust and understanding. And that's something I think I have on my website. I have mutual trust and understanding. I mean, we use it on our people side every day, but I think that you really can't have a relationship with any being without trust. And so I think that is just the underlying, theme of all of this. And I think to get to the win-win, you have to have the trust. So it's kind of all building on each other. But the way that you get trust is listening, staying true to your word, like all very, these are all things that like we just do in life. And that's why sometimes when I'm promoting my business, I feel like this is just basic, this is life. And so I feel like I'm in a kind of funny place trying to promote that, but it is true. That's how you build a relationship. The person calls you, you call them back, you listen. And I did have someone early on in one of my organizations ask me, can you give me some advice for, how to build a relationship. And I was like, you need to pick up the phone when they call, you need to call them back, and you need to write the email, or, you know what I mean? You need to listen to them. And I think this person had prefaced that with saying, oh, I'm so bad at emails. And I'm like, you need to respond. You can't have that without that. You have to communicate. It's a two-way street. And so to get to that win-win, you have to build that trust and clarity. Hope that makes sense. And thank you for letting me talk about horses. I won't dominate on that subject, but
No, but I think it's an important thing, and another example of really great storytelling. And so you saw that open it up, like there's already that connection with Chris and his daughter. And so would love to toss it back out to the audience, and would, I put a Nagi, welcome. I'm really glad you're here, and if you're comfortable, would love for you to sort of expand on what you said and how that has impacted the work that you're doing with Pure Minds.
Hi guys, how are you?
Hi,
Thank you, Jacob, for inviting me to this, and thank you, Paula, for showcasing your knowledge and input on your experience with this. Um, I do agree with what Paula just said in terms of communication. There needs to be communication and follow through in order to make sure that whatever initiative you're working on, in particular a project, or whether it's long term or short term, can meet its goal and can be ongoing as needed. So.
Mhm.
Jacob knows me. We recently met, Jacob and I, but we connected immediately because of the need for, connection, right? And having that collaboration. I believe collaboration is key. And that nonprofits in particular should not be competing, but collaborating more often. So I think with that said, it's just a matter of, I'm sorry, I'm kind of losing my train of thought here a little bit. But yeah, I think collaboration is really important for growth, especially for younger startup organizations like myself, utilizing the networks that you have and showcasing the unique mission that you want to provide for the community, and saying that, hey, let's balance each other out. Right, let's find that balance with one another. You may have resources or connections and networks that I may not yet have, and vice versa. Which is exactly what happened. So we're a mental health organization, Pure Minds, that's dedicated to providing mental health services through means of social, through means of social aspect, as opposed to clinical, particularly for the Middle Eastern, North African, and South Asian communities, which is, a rare thing. It's not as common, but it is in particular at the same time. So a lot of my partnerships, relationships are built off of that, built off of trust and wanting to work together. We've collaborated so many times in the past that we already have an established relationship, and continuing to connect others with others. So that's what's that term that I'm thinking of? It'll come to me, but
Yeah.
the
I love
point
that
is
idea of
continuing to
connecting
connect.
others with others. So I think that's really important too, right? Because
Right.
it's not only about you, it's about others. And what can I do? How can I serve? How does this conversation serve others as well as me, right?
Right, and it's getting to unreachable places that they're
Mhm.
not able to get to, but can through you, and vice versa.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I think sometimes too, that comment really struck me because um it's very selfless. It's not like, oh, it's not about my business, like this is the connection that needs to happen. Like we're, Naji, you and I are connected now, and but actually, Naji, you need to know Jacob, and so, let me take myself out of this. Let me make sure I make that connection, that I see that the two of you could collaborate on something. And I think that's just that builds a lot of trust. It's like, oh, well, she's talking to me, but and it's her business, but she thinks that this is a connection that would be beneficial to me. And so I think that goes a long way to do that.
And also on that note, to build on that, like I think it's, the work that we're all doing, you can sort of see in some ways there are so many things that are at a standstill. There are things that are sort of like running on a treadmill. Some things are going backwards. And I think we all have to embrace this, like, long game mentality. And, when you're playing the long game, there might not be benefits that come back to you immediately, but in the game that we're talking about, in the game that we play as relationship builders and network weavers, is there's always value that comes back. When people say, oh, like, you made a great connection, like, I feel like I need to do something for you. It's like, no, like, that connection, you are doing something. Like, you working with this organization allows for greater trust. Like, I brought y'all both together, great things can happen, and now more trust and value is established. And so I think it's just being committed, and playing the role that best see. Like, I love, like, from my time as a geologist to teaching to this world that I've been living in the last few years. Like, I've always had a vision of correlating and connecting. And so I think that's something that I'm very good at, and something that brings a lot of joy to me. And so I do that with a knowledge that value will always return, but no expectations, because it's, for me, the impact always comes first.
Yeah, I think the long game is so important. I tell all my prospective clients and clients that this is a long game. This is not, an overnight fix on things. I usually tell people, like, if you're building new relationships, before you're really able to make like a big ask, it's like 12 to 18 months. And it's, cultivating that relationship, talking to each other, and it's funny because it's not always like such a business conversation. And I had a connection point say that to me when I was, working for an organization, and we were out networking, and we were, discussing some collaboration, and, we went and had coffee, and I learned some, her husband does this job and my husband does that job. Oh, and we both had cats. And so it was funny because she stopped and she's like, I feel like I'm talking to a friend. And I said, you kind of are. I said, there's going to be places where, this is about work, and there's going to be, it's just, we're getting to know each other. And so where are there lines of like similarities and things that we can sort of build on to have a relationship? But yeah, it's kind of like that. But it's also like, there's going to be times where maybe your organization is going to ask my organization for something, and we're not going to be able to do it. And that's going to be okay too, because sometimes, your connections can't always do the thing that you want them to do or need to do, or there might be a little bit of a conflict, and that can be done gracefully. It doesn't have to always be a huge deal. But I think it's really important to note that it's a long game, and note that you're getting to know people, and your connections, they're human. We're all human. So it's like, we're not always like these robots, that are doing things. So I think that's also where that human side comes in, and again, I sort of have that little bit of imposter syndrome. I'm like, this is basic life, but it's also my business. So
Yeah, and it's like, I try to, on intro calls, I try to set it up in a natural way. Is like, this, I want it to be like, old friends or colleagues talking, because to me that allows me to be comfortable, me to be myself. I'm always going to be myself, but like, it also, yeah, allows me to see, like, can this really work moving forward? I've had conversations where it's the conversation is more transactional, and to me, like, that's a check mark, saying, like, not saying I can't work with this person, but maybe it might take a little bit longer time, to build that relationship. Because, as I've told people before in conversations, like, I care about what you do, but I care more about who you are first. Who you are as a person comes before what you do. And so, as we evolve this conversation, I want to, think about, like, moving towards action, because I think that's critical in today's world. Is how can we move these conversations into and start to move towards action. And one thing I really appreciate about your work, Paula, is how actionable it is. You move beyond let's collaborate to here's how to design, audit, and sustain it. And so, a lot of people, think about the word audit in sort of a scary term. And so I'd love to hear, how you, like, what auditing looks like in practice for you. What are the
Yeah.
first questions a nonprofit leader should ask when assessing the strength or potential of a partnership? You know, thinking about these things in terms of your process.
Well, I think that, each organization will need to kind of approach it a little differently. I'm sorry, I have some helicopters overhead, so it's a little loud. Can you all hear me still okay?
Yep.
Okay, good. Yeah, so I think that, each organization needs to handle it, a little differently. But in essence, what, I suggest is that, really kind of looking through like who you're speaking to now, who are your partners, who are your real partners, and looking at that list a little critically, and then also looking at your strategic plan, or if you don't have one, you need to get one, and saying like, who do we need to know, and then taking those lists and combining them and sort of saying, okay, now who, what, like some of these relationships are, that we're not really doing that anymore. And it doesn't mean you have to cut the person off completely, but I think that you maybe there may be at a lower priority. It might involve a conversation like, hey, we are actually moving away from this topic at this time. Our strategic plan is going in this direction. There's probably not a good place for us to coordinate right now. Let's keep the relationship on a burner, see how things change. I think that's a very graceful way to handle it. If you have an organization, and I've worked for organizations that have a lot of like MOUs and a lot of written documents in place, and sometimes those are actually, I counted a number that are sort of written into perpetuity. And there was a point where I had to say, there's actually things in here that we can't accommodate anymore as an organization. We're going into a different direction. We're not handling those issues anymore. And again, just, obviously having a real heart to heart and saying, I think that this document that, I think we should still talk, but this document is not really doing it for me anymore. I think that, and this is definitely where it gets customized to each organization, where you do sort of a checklist, right? And I always kind of envision it as and I'm never as good at putting this together, but if yes, go here. If no, go here. Are our missions aligned? Yes, okay, we're still aligned. Ethically, values, are those things still aligned? Yes. If they're no, that kind of starts weeding things out. If the organization maybe their values have changed, or their mission has changed, then maybe we just, we agree to be we agree to be friends. And there's nowhere to need, nothing that needs to be done. So I think that has to happen very delicately. It is very particular to each organization. I mean, it's like there's no formula. I think somebody had asked me once, like, can I just have the framework that you use? And I was like, it's kind of different for everyone. And it's not like one framework, but it depends on the type of organization. And for instance, the therapy barn that I work with, they have grants that are dedicated to veterans. And so they actually were noticing that they had this grant money sitting there that they weren't able to use because they didn't have enough veteran riders. And so then it's like, okay, so we need to find some organizations that might be able to utilize this money and actually get some benefit for their members, And so we were able to find a couple of organizations that have some veterans that were in need of this type of service. And so we were able to kind of partner with them on that, right? And say, hey, we actually have funds to pay for this, but if we don't do it, we're going to lose it. So I think there's, that's a very clear example of, we don't have this, we need it. Like, who do we work with, And so, one of the organizations actually does a lot of leadership training for their veterans. And so they were like, oh, wow, we're interested in maybe even taking that partnership further and doing some leadership retreats with your barn. So it's, it's kind of one of those things where it's like, what are we missing? Where are we going? What are we missing? Who needs to come along on the ride? I think that another good example of that sort of, real curation was at my job at the American Institute of Architects. We were very clearly aligned with climate action, and that played into the role at COP. But we had already been cultivating a series of CEO conversations along the lines of climate, and we really sat down and were like, who needs to be on this conversation with us, as the built environment. We gathered those organizations together, and we'd been having these conversations so that when we were approached about we want to take a delegation to COP, and we had gotten our NGO status, within weeks we had to like mobilize, and luckily those conversations had already been happening, so that I was able to go to those organizations and determine like who's already been to COP, like who's, and so my colleagues and I were able to gather up a group, and rather than just saying, hey, the architects, there's a delegation of 3 or 6 of them going to COP, now we went with a group. And we had, we were able to, like, we would be able to get some meetings with people and invite others in the group with us, and others would get, somebody got like a webinar that we were able to participate in. So, I think, that goes with that whole give and take, but it's literally starts with a conversation of where are we going as an organization? What are we missing? And then again, the uncomfortable side of like, maybe we don't put as much time and effort into some of these conversations, and that just has to be done with a lot of grace.
Yes, yeah. I mean, it's the old saying. I feel like we're saying a lot of sayings, old and new, but like you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable. I think that complacency, which I think is an issue in a lot of the impact spaces, is these are systems that have served us for a long time, and so why is there a need to change? Earlier this year, we overnight there was a need to change, and if you're in a state of complacency, that's going to limit your ability to be a critical thinker or problem solve. And so as I said, and then I'm going to toss it to the crowd, but like as I said in the chat, it's like there are so many processes and flows that are very rigid, but that don't align with how the world is. The world is dynamic. The communities that we're working with, the people that we're working with are dynamic. And so we must be, and these systems must be as dynamic as the world we live in and work in. And so, but thinking about action and some of the aspects that Paula talked about, would love to bring back in anyone from the audience that would like to come off mute and share some thoughts. Yes, Siobhan.
I'm here. I'm a blank screen.
Hi, Siobhan.
Hi, everybody. I am Siobhan Shah. I can't even see myself. I don't know what's happening, but hello.
There you are.
Oh, there I am.
We see you.
Hi. I love this conversation. I got in halfway through because technology was telling me this is tomorrow or this afternoon. So I was out getting coffee, which is part of my new routine. And you were talking about building relationships, and I think that is key. So I have an example of how we've built a strong relationship in Phoenix with organizations and corporations. And the Phoenix Food Forest Initiative that we support, and I started out by mentoring Christopher Macy, and he's a veteran, he's a Navy veteran, and he had this idea to start planting fruit trees on the city streets, like the verges, right? They're barren in the city. Doug would know about that. And so this is West Phoenix, and it's low income area. And he said, I'm going to do this. I'm going to start planting trees. So he started using his own money, much like John and I did with Growing to Give. And he reached out to all kinds of organizations, and nobody would give him the time of day because he was new. They didn't know who he was. He had no credibility. And so he reached out. Somebody told him about us. I don't know who it was, but I want to thank them, whoever it was, because it's become an important part of what Growing to Give does. But here's the relationship building that happened. So Christopher reached out to me. I didn't know who he was, but we were close enough that we could take a drive over to his house and see what he was doing, and see his backyard full of fig trees and chickens and a fish pond and the whole bit, right? Wow. And all the trees that he was starting to plant on the sidewalks and how they were starting to grow up, and even sugarcane. It was incredible. And they're just still little, but in 20 years, you can imagine the impact it will have on the biodiversity of the neighborhood, on the neighborhood's, the society itself, the communication between neighbors. It's already happening. They're already starting to have barbecues and all kinds of things. And so when he reached out, he and I talked almost every day, every single day. He reached out. I mentored him the best I could, and I encouraged him to forget about the grants because of what had happened with the federal grants and knowing how that flows downhill to the smaller organizations, that the grant world was changing and we don't know what it's going to look like. But focus on your local companies and organizations and the corporations that are there in the Phoenix area. And he started to do that. And he started to build these relationships. We have the Diamondbacks, the Wounded Warriors, right? Yeah. Grand Canyon University. And that's just this year. And a whole host of other, like Jimmy John's and all kinds of restaurants, because he would go to a restaurant and meet the manager. He went out and did the legwork that it takes to get the sponsors. And they're giving us in-kind stuff. It's not big, there's no money coming in, no cash coming in. But what he's done is he started a planting day in the spring, and that was great success. I think we brought in about $10,000 worth of services from the community. And then we did one just in October, and he has the guys that do the barricades. They've signed up forever with the Phoenix Food Forest Initiative. The city of Phoenix has put the Food Forest Initiative on their GAIN events, which is getting Arizona involved in neighborhoods. So they're working with us, and Christopher has done an amazing job. So it's gone from Christopher and I talking to Christopher talking within the community, to Christopher building those relationships and using, always CCing me. So he had this credibility of growingtogive.org. He's not even using his own growingtogive.org email. He still uses his regular Gmail, but he's always CCing me. And so these community partners are seeing that we're real, we're here, we're sticking around, and we're building more and more trees. And even when we had a theft of trees, somebody was coming out and pulling all the new starts out. We had the police involved, and they were so amazing to Christopher that I know that even if I wasn't here, and that was a possibility this summer, and that'll be something I talk about another time, Jacob. But once you establish those partnerships in your community, you can do anything. And I've started another campaign within Growing to Give called Cancer Bites, and it's a podcasting community because of what happened to me this summer. But I'd be able to reach out to those established partners if I see a way to work with them for helping breast cancer patients find comfort and resources and so on and so forth. So it's so important to build that relationship from the ground floor.
Literally from the ground up. That's amazing. That's an amazing story. I mean, that's such a great illustration to kind of add to this discussion about the power of partnerships, and also those cold calls, because I ran into that with the therapy barns as well, when they, because they're smaller and community based. And for their galas, they were just like calling all the real estate agents and seeking sponsors. And I'm like, you have to find you have to kind of pinpoint the right person, and then have like maybe someone walk in the door a little bit, or, have someone introduce you. And, I was a little bit flummoxed, because I was like, well, if you're looking at a therapy barn, you're looking at the people might donate or be interested because they care about the people we're serving. There's also like another arm where it's like people just like horses and they, you know, they're potential donors, but you got to find the right combo. You can't just like throw the spaghetti at the wall with this. And so I love how your friend, you know, had worked out for them. Like they came to you, you were able to sort of help open those doors, and then yeah, it takes a while to cultivate it, but once they came in, they were like, seems like they're reining in. That's amazing.
Yeah,
Right.
they are. And you're right about finding something that's a commonality.
Mm-hmm.
So Wilderness Brewery, which is a restaurant in Arizona, and they support, guess what? Veterans and first responders. So Christopher going in there for dinner with his wife and meeting the manager of one of these, and then, you know, telling them what they're doing, and then getting a card and getting a name and an email of who he's supposed to talk to. It's as simple as that. And some say no,
Mm-hmm.
but some will say yes eventually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's just
Some
so
come and go, you know, they may not be able to support both planting days, but maybe next spring they'll support again. And to have a group like ARC Barricades come up and say, we want to support all your events that are on the city streets that you need barricades for, we're there. That's huge.
And another point that I think you made that's critical, and thank you, Siobhan, as always, you know, is there's never a time to, you know, you feel like you have to start relationship. I feel like a lot of organizations, and this was a lesson I learned with the first organization I was supporting after leaving the classroom for fundraising and partnerships, was like, there was like, well, we need to wait until we have this or this or this to start going out and building relationships. No, like that is an ongoing process that starts day one, especially in this world that funding is very inaccessible, especially for new nonprofits and organizations. It's like, how can I build myself up through credible partners? Is there a partner, like, you know, there's this organization that's a member of the task force called Super Better. That's a company that has mind-blowing amounts of like amazing research that you know, they are a powerful partner where they can come in and uplift credibility through that research that often organizations are lacking because it takes so much time and effort to build. And so yeah, it's day one that you start building relationships, that you start building community and focusing local, focusing on alignment, and being yourself as always is a way to do it. And so, Paul, we have about 6 minutes left, and so I'd love to, you know, open it up for questions, or if you have any final thoughts. But how would you like to close this amazing event?
One final thought, and something I didn't quite talk about, but you just touched on it there, was sort of another I kind of like was like, what's the how-tos on this? And a really good way to build those relationships is if you can create a small community, like we did for the, you know, for the sustainability, for the architects, like we created a community that ended up sort of serving another purpose. But I think anytime you can create a or a group around something that's really exciting to them, I think that really helps. But that's kind of the last bit that I had. I just really appreciated the opportunity to talk about this, and I would take any questions or just additional feel-good stories.
Yeah, let's open it up. Anybody, those that are here, any final thoughts or questions you might have for Paula, or just thoughts about today's conversation? Feel free to come off mute.
Hi, I was listening
Question.
to
I
the
have a question
conversation.
going back.
I don't work for am I audible to all of
Yeah,
you?
go ahead, Sayali. Yes.
Yeah. Hi, this is Sayali. I'm from Aprilive, which is more into software building business. So, but I was listening to this conversation. I just read the virtual league. I didn't read the nonprofit, but the conversation was interesting. So I was just, continued to listen. So I just would like to know a few more things because I'm also involved in a couple of nonprofits here. in Austin, Texas. And so we have one of the nonprofits that work for, human trafficking, the survivors of human trafficking.
Mhm.
So how well can, we can make connections and, do that kind of community support that somebody talk, I think you talk about, right? I couldn't pronounce the name. Siobhan?
Siobhan.
Siobhan, yeah.
Siobhan, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. So, that is what I somewhere I think that in terms of building relationship, in terms of providing a community support for such kind of noble cause, what best can we do? And if at all you have any ideas, feel free to connect with me. I will just put my link here. Yeah, and I will definitely be happy to get in touch and
Yeah.
learn.
We can reach out after the call and just, have some ideas about, the location that you're in and the community and the size of organization and sort of look for like-minded, help look for some like-minded organizations to get you all started. I think that's such an amazing cause and it's so needed right now.
Yeah.
There's more and more, you hear more and more stories about that. So I think any one of us would be happy. I'll be sure to reach out, and I'm sure Jacob and Siobhan might want to as well.
Sure, thank you.
Do we have time for my question?
Yeah, I think we have a few minutes, so we can try to make it happen.
And Sayali, I'd love to connect with you as well. I'll put my LinkedIn. You can always find me on LinkedIn, Siobhan Shah. I don't think there's many of us. And
Yes,
it's growing
absolutely.
to give.org.
Yeah, let's connect.
Growing to give.org. Okay, so Paula, earlier when I jumped in, somebody was talking about collaboration versus competition. And there seems to be in our arena of the food security arena, a tremendous amount of competition as opposed to collaboration. And I came in with this innocent-eyed idea that I could bring all these community farms together, and that is not how it is, because everybody's fighting for the same dollars. And so when they see an upstart come in, even though we can help them, there is a huge resistance. So have you found that, and how do you deal with it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's still a lot of the nature of the beast, right? And there's a very much a scarcity mindset that we're living in right now. And so I see it a lot with the horse barns because, like they're all offering therapy. There's not enough horses to go around. There's certainly ways to collaborate, and yet they're all sort of like, well, like we do this and we want these sponsors. I think that the best thing that you can do in that case is to understand it's human nature, right? That's just happening. But I think trying to find those common threads, and they might be really thin and kind of loose at first, right? But just trying to suss out where's the commonality, where can we come together? And maybe it's just something really small that you come together on first. Like it doesn't have to be like, we're going to fix this whole thing. It's going to be like, maybe there's just this one piece that we can start working together, building that trust and letting them see like, it's okay. Like like this is going to benefit everybody. I think that a lot of times, I've more times in my career said, please leave your hat at the door, we're all on equal footing here. People don't like it. They're uncomfortable with it. They think, they're going to lose something. So I think that I'm still working on a right answer to that. I don't know if there will ever be this is how you fix it. But I think if you can ever find, even if it's just one of the organizations, that you're starting with, that we have this common thread, and maybe the two of us work together on something, and then, that propels them to, let's bring someone else into this conversation. And so again, I think we both Jacob and I saying, and Jacob said it first, long game. It takes a while to build that trust. And so I think if somebody can see that they're not losing something, that they're winning, that they're going to gain, and you can make that case, I think that's just the way to go in. But if you just find the tiniest little thread to hang on to and get in, and then see if you can build it from there.
Like the cats.
Like
Yeah.
Like the cats.
And like one of the, like, to sort of close us for the day and also respond, like, during our conversation, Paul and I, one of the things we were talking about is like, how could all of these horse stables that focus on mental wellness, how could they formally join and collaborate? The competition that's happening is not conducive for the impact that's necessary. And so, but it's understandable because the way that these old systems were built, rewarded sort of that more siloed approach. And so I think, to me, it's always, visualizing, the ecosystem. You can think about it as a ecosystem out in nature. Increase in biodiversity gives an increase in sustainability. Put my old 7th grade teacher hat on. But it's also seeing that. And so mapping and showing people, hey, this is how everything is interconnected. If you take one thing out of the mix, how is that going to impact the whole? And so I think, always bringing it to some sort of visualization so people can see how one impacts the other, how reducing resources for one impacts the whole. And so, yeah, I think there's a lot of formal ways, like, I've sort of built my understanding of collective impact on Stanford's model that they developed, but always put my own little twist. But thinking too about just, showing how interconnected everything is, and taking the time to really hear people out, leading with curiosity, and really always valuing connections and connecting people, because I think that's a way to also see how people connect and connect through conversations. No, we went a little over, but this was such an amazing conversation, and something I can get really, really excited about, and something that is sort of aligns with the ethos of Global Chamber, this interconnected global network. And so thank you, Paula. Thank you to everyone who attended and participated. I really appreciate that. Yeah, any final words, Paula?
No, I just really appreciate everyone giving me the time today. It's really fun to talk about this, and great to meet everyone. And I've dropped my LinkedIn there as well. So look forward to connecting again on another call.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. And we will see you at our next event. Have a great rest of your week and weekend.
Thank you. And Jacob, thank you. Stellar job.
Thank you. No, right back at you. Appreciate it.
Bye,
Bye, everyone.